This is the document that stopped a war. 14 points, agreed in Islamabad on June 17, 2026. The United States on one side, Iran on the other. 3 weeks later, tankers were burning near the Strait of Hormuz. American aircraft were striking targets along Iran's southern coast, and the President of the United States declared the ceasefire over. To understand why it fell apart this fast, you have to read paragraph 5 and notice what it never says.
Paragraph 5 is the deal's entire answer to its hardest question. As published, Iran agrees to make arrangements for the safe passage of commercial vessels through the strait for 60 days, and to hold dialogue with Oman about the strait's future administration, in line with international law and the sovereign rights of coastal states. Read it again. It never says who approves the shipping routes. It never says who clears the mines, who charges the fees, or whose navy stands guard. Washington read it as Iran stepping back from the strait. Tehran read it as Iran running the strait while the talks continued. Both signed. One caution before we go on. This text is the American account of the memorandum, published by Al Jazeera. Iran has never confirmed it word for word.
The question matters because of what moves through that water. The strait is the only sea exit from the Persian Gulf, about 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point, and roughly 1/5 of the world's petroleum passes through it. Every tanker captain, every insurer, every navy in the region needs to know one thing before a ship sails: whose rules apply here? The memorandum bought 60 days without answering. To see why both sides wanted this deal at all, rewind to February. On February 28th, American and Israeli strikes opened the 2026 Iran war. Among the dead, according to multiple reports, was Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled the Islamic Republic for 36 years. Washington's talk of regime change did not survive contact with what happened next. By March, reports named his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as successor, though how visible he is and how firmly he actually holds power remains disputed to this day. The leadership changed. The system did not. The Islamic Republic that Washington had bombed was still the government it would have to negotiate with. So the war ground on into spring. Strikes, a naval blockade on Iranian ports, and economies on both sides of the strait bleeding money. This is what the blockade looked like in April. A U.S. Navy helicopter filming a merchant ship in the Gulf of Oman, while a warship orders it to change course. Control of this waterway is exercised partly through radio calls like this one. By June, Pakistan was brokering talks, and in Islamabad, negotiators produced the 14 points. Here is what each side promised, on paper. The fighting stops. Negotiators get a maximum of 60 days to reach a final deal, extendable only if both sides agree. The United States begins removing its blockade and issues waivers letting Iranian oil flow again. And on June 21st, the U.S. Treasury did exactly that, licensing purchases of Iranian fossil fuels. Iran, in return, arranges safe passage through the strait. Everything hard, ending sanctions for good, frozen assets, enriched uranium, reconstruction money, was pushed into the 60-day talks. And for about 2.5 weeks, it held. Tankers came back. Iranian oil found buyers. But underneath the calm, the two readings of paragraph 5 were quietly colliding. Reporting from the talks describes a dispute over routes. Washington and Oman working on corridors Iran had not approved, and Tehran insisting that reopening the strait, the mine clearance, the service fees, the routes themselves, was Iran's to run. A strait does not reopen because a document says so. Someone has to sweep it, chart it, insure it, and guard it. The memorandum never said who.
On the night of July 6th into July 7th, that question got tested. A Qatari liquefied natural gas carrier, the Al Raqayat, was hit on its port side near the engine room off the coast of Oman. A fire broke out. The crew was reported safe and the cargo tanks intact. A Saudi crude tanker, the Wudyan, was struck in the same window, and reports name a third vessel as well. Within hours, traffic through the strait began to stall, and war risk insurance premiums jumped.
Who fired? That is the most disputed fact in this story. Qatar said Iran was fully responsible. Saudi Arabia condemned Iran by name. American officials blamed Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Iran's answer was stranger. State television said the tanker was attacked after ignoring warnings, language that justifies the strike without quite claiming it. No independent investigation has published findings. What is verifiable is what happened next.
Washington answered within about 24 hours, on two fronts. The Treasury revoked the oil waiver it had issued 3 weeks earlier. Buyers of Iranian crude got until July 17th to wind down, and no new cargoes could load. And Central Command began striking Iranian targets, coastal missile sites, radars, Revolutionary Guard boats, concentrated around Qeshm Island and Bandar Abbas. The U.S. military says it hit over 80 targets. Some reporting says roughly 90. Both numbers come from the American side. No independent count exists.
Iran's retaliation, unlike the tanker attacks, was openly claimed. Its military announced drone and missile strikes on sites linked to American forces in Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain. A Patriot missile battery, an early warning radar, fuel storage, and ballistic missiles aimed at an airbase in Jordan used by U.S. forces. Gulf states reported most of the incoming fire intercepted, with damage on the ground and at least one person reported injured. Notice the asymmetry. Tehran claimed these strikes loudly, and the tanker attacks not at all.
Then, on July 10th, the American verdict landed in a social media post. Iran, Trump wrote, had asked to continue talks, and the United States had agreed. But the ceasefire, he wrote in capital letters, is over. The same day, American officials said they expected Iran to publicly declare the Strait of Hormuz open, a public answer to the exact question paragraph 5 had left blank. Iran's foreign minister prepared to fly to Oman. Qatar kept mediating. The war was back, and so, strangely, were the talks.
So run the audit. Iran promised safe passage arrangements. 3 tankers were hit in waters it claims authority over, and while Tehran never claimed the attacks, its state media justified them. The United States promised sanctions relief and a path out of the blockade. It revoked the oil waiver and struck over 80 targets, after, it says, Iran broke the deal first. Here is the uncomfortable part. Each side's actions only count as violations under the other side's reading of paragraph 5. If Iran had surrendered control of the strait, then attacking ships shredded the deal. If Iran had kept control, then foreign-run corridors and a sanctioned snapback shredded it. The text supports both readings. That means it settled neither. Was the collapse a betrayal, a provocation, or the predictable end of a deal that hid its hardest question? On the evidence so far, the ambiguity looks less like a drafting accident than like the price of getting a signature in June. Both governments accepted a sentence each could read its own way, and both then acted as if their own reading had won, until someone tested it. Watch 2 things next. Whether Iran publicly declares the strait open, as Washington is demanding, and whether the next document, if there is one, says in plain words who controls the Strait of Hormuz. This one never did.